Your Creative Push, episode 287. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Your Creative Push. Today's episode is going to be something a little bit different, something much less planned out. Something that I feel is necessary for me and long overdue, talking specifically about why I failed at Cramuary, the community event that I myself created and started, where I encouraged you to take that big project, that big goal that you had for your New Year's resolution and complete it by the end of January. And I was going to take on this mission myself by writing the Your Creative Push book in 1 month. But I didn't do that. In fact, I didn't even start to do that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why that happened, why I made that decision. I already talked about one of the reasons with Alatar on their show Blue Magic. I'll have that linked up at today's show notes page, yourcreativepush.com/287. But the burnout that we talked about on that episode was just one of the reasons that I've come to discover as to why I made this decision not to write the book yet. And for this episode today, I'm kind of just going to work it out. One of the great things about being married is that I get to talk to my lovely wife about any problems that I'm having. It's just like writing, it's a way for me to figure out exactly how I feel, exactly why I feel a certain way, exactly why I do some of the things that I do. I'm more of the woman in the relationship, and I need to kind of talk things out in order to fall asleep at night, make sure everything's all right between us, and it does wonders for my psyche. So that's kind of what I'm planning on doing today. I have a few bullet points written down, and I'm going to kind of try to work it out myself as we go. And it took me so long to do this, to sit down in front of the microphone and really explore my own failure to do this, to write the book, mostly because of shame. Because, here I am, I'm a podcast host for a podcast that is talking exclusively about getting past your own creative resistances. And not only that, but I also created a challenge, Cramuary, designed specifically to blow past your own resistances and to create this big project that you've been putting off for a long time. And then I failed, and then I didn't even do it. So I think that's one of the main reasons that I've been so scared to do this, to not appear as a failure, when in fact the whole purpose of this podcast is to talk about our own failures, to talk to other people that have all of these creative resistances that hold them back, and to show that we all go through these things. So it was pretty eye-opening as I'm preparing to talk about this and do this episode, to notice and to kind of come to the realization as to how much I've taken myself out of the show, how much I've taken my own experiences, my own resistances out of the equation during these conversations. Yes, sometimes I take stories from the past, from the old Youngman, from before the podcast started, but I realize that I've kind of been omitting the things that I'm currently going through, I guess as a way to appear as, more of an expert, and as if I'm immune to some of these things that we're talking about on the show. And that's something that's definitely going to change going forward, especially after I kind of confess my sins here. And as much as I can, bare my soul to you, to show you that, yes, even somebody who has devoted the past 2.5 years to creating a podcast that discusses getting past your own creative resistances, that it still happens to me, and it can happen to me in a very big way. So that's what we're going to do today. I wrote down here a list of 6, quote, excuses as to why I did not write the book. And I don't know how long this episode is going to last, but I just wanted to touch on each of these points and kind of explain my story so that hopefully you can take something from it. I feel like some of these resistances I saw coming because of the show, because I've talked about these things with so many people, and that's why I decided to do what I did. And so the first one was Burnout. And this Burnout started to hit me before I made the pledge to do the Cramuary challenge. I was feeling burnt out from devoting so much time to the podcast and not getting to my own kind of creative work. That's the one sort of battle that I've been having for the past year and a half even, was the fact that so much of my time got pushed into the podcast and scheduling interviews and all this stuff. That I've definitely talked about that resistance on the show before, and I don't mean to complain about it because the podcast is a wonderful thing. However, getting to my writing was a tough thing. I did do the NaNoWriMo challenge back in November. I had talked about that with Joanna Penn and some other writers. And originally I was going to write the book in that month. However, I knew that I had been writing so little for the past couple years that I just wanted to get my writing chops back. I just wanted to write whatever. And I did do that challenge, and I did write a ton of stuff, and it felt great. But it wasn't geared towards writing a book in 1 month, which is what NaNoWriMo is. So that was good. That was nice. And that was fun. However, I knew that I wanted to write the book in January. That was like my plan. And that meant that in December, I wanted to clear my slate, do extra interviews, and get extra episodes prepared for that month. So that meant doing double the work for the podcast in 1 month, so that I would have a clear slate to just focus on writing the book in January. But I was already feeling burnt out, and you can imagine that doubling my workload for a month really burnt me out. That just completely took away any kind of motivation or drive come January 1st. And actually, some listeners reached out to me and said they could tell, they could hear it in my voice, they were asking if everything was okay, which I thought was pretty interesting and super sweet, by the way. Thank you. But January 1st comes around, and instead of feeling super excited for this big project I'm about to do, I mean, I'm a writer and I'm about to write my first book, which is a big deal. I want to enjoy this thing, I want to actually enjoy the process of thinking back of the past, 2 years, all the lessons that I've learned, all of the mistakes that I've made, all of the people that I've talked to, all of the experiences, and put them together and really enjoy the process of creating this kind of thesis, this kind of Bible of your creative push. And I was thinking about doing all that work and putting all that time in, and I was just dreading it. I was dreading the thought of writing every single day, of having to get this thing done. And that is pretty much when I made the decision to just not even try, because if this is my first book as a writer, I want to enjoy it. I want to enjoy the hell out of it. I want it to be like a spiritual process for me, like a cathartic way to justify not justify, but to sum up these past 2 years and honestly give a reason to putting all of my free time in the past couple of years towards this podcast. And I am kind of an obsessive personality where when I dive into something, I dive deep and fast and hard, and I go at it 200%. This podcast is a perfect example of that. I was putting out 5 episodes a week. I don't even know how I did it, but I like to hit the ground running and just go and let the muse come to me when she can, and just get as many ideas down on paper as possible. And knowing myself and knowing my personality like that, and knowing that I wasn't even excited about doing this thing that I committed to doing, I realized that I needed to throw in the towel before the fight even started, which I still stand by as being the right decision. However, it's also a kind of shameful thing when I've made this public declaration that I'm going to do this thing. I've committed to myself that I'm going to do this thing. I've committed to my calendar that I'm going to get this thing done, getting all the work done for the podcast beforehand. I've committed to my wife. We did clear out our calendar so that I could do this thing. And then to quit before I even started, it was a tough decision to make, but it was definitely a necessary decision to make as well. Because what I really needed to solve that burnout was just time off. So it was great to have the calendar clear, to get some distance from your creative push. And don't take offense to that, please. But it was one of the best things that could have happened to me, because when I did get that break, that month-long break, where I didn't have to edit the episodes or do interviews, I could just completely get distance from it. It made me so much more excited when I came back, for not only the book, but for the podcast as well. But being able to kind of have this complete separation from the thing was very necessary for me. I don't know if any of you watch Casey Neistat, but he is a vlogger. He is one of the most popular people on YouTube. He's very inspirational as well. I highly suggest you follow him. But he did daily vlogs for, I think, years, and then quit like a year and a half ago. And he just showed up about a month ago. He bought back his office space, and he's creating this new thing called 368. It was really interesting. He wants to bring creative people together in this kind of office space in New York. And I'm actually going to reach out to him and try to see if your creative push can help, or we can join up, because I think it's kind of the perfect situation for creative people to come together. Actually, the CEO of Patreon reached out to him in this really cool video, and they're going to be collaborating on something. I'm really interested to see where that goes. But the whole point of the Casey Neistat story is that when he showed up again on YouTube and said that he was going to start doing daily vlogs again, the thing he said was that he needed that distance from YouTube, from creating content every single day, to be able to reevaluate and to come back with new goals and new inspiration. And I was just like, yep, that is exactly right, Casey. You are dead on. That's exactly what happened to me, and it definitely worked. But in this like resting phase, you know me, I can't just rest and just watch TV or relax, because I feel like I've cut that out of my life since I started this podcast. But I did two kind of major things. Number one, I started applying to new jobs, actually, because I realized how much I fucking hate my job. Don't tell my boss. But I'm definitely working towards figuring out a new career for myself so that I'm not so miserable 8 hours a day. Maybe, Casey, if you're listening to this, you can hire me to come on and be your podcaster, or pay me in some other fashion. But I also did this other weird thing, which is I created a YouTube channel about Bitcoin. And I'm laughing just because it's just funny that I went from one major project to another major project. But the reason I started that channel wasn't to like create this new thing, but to kind of help my friends, because I haven't talked about this on the podcast before, but I have been interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency for 4 or 5 years, actually. A lot of my friends and coworkers know this, and November and December saw Bitcoin going up to like 20,000 at its peak. And I've been in the space for long enough, and I've seen all of these people that were never interested in crypto before, start asking me questions about it. And I was answering a lot of the same questions. And I have this podcast, and I'm comfortable enough making content that I figured I wanted to just make a channel and just refer them to that to answer all their questions. So I just had to answer them once, because I've been in the crypto world and been paying attention to the prices for long enough that I knew that a correction was due, and I knew that all of my friends that were asking me how to buy, I was kind of suggesting, as non-financial advice-y as I could be, that maybe they should wait for the price to come back down, because I didn't want them to get wrecked. And it turned out that the channel maybe I wasn't convincing enough, because a lot of them still bought, and they bought at the top. And I don't think that that's the all-time high, by the way, in case anybody else is interested in crypto. I think we're going to see those all-time highs again and further. But A lot of them did exactly what you're not supposed to in financial markets, which is buy high and sell low. You're supposed to do the opposite. And I was just trying to give them some friendly advice that maybe you should wait and not join in on the FOMO that is going to wreck a lot of people. But the point is that I had been thinking about creating some kind of content around crypto just to help out my family and friends for a while, for probably like 5 or 6 months. And that was one of the things that was kind of on my list of things that I wanted to do, things that I wanted to create, but things that I didn't have enough time to get to. And it felt really good to be able to check that off, but to also dive into one of my other passions and find a way to create some other type of content to distance myself even further from this podcast and get my brain thinking in different ways, like I'm always suggesting that you all do. But the whole process of creating videos taught me some new things about podcasting as well. To be able to not only, see myself on camera, to get over that kind of fear, because I do plan on making some videos for Your Creative Push on the YouTube channel, but also thinking about doing things in one shot and not relying on editing and just going off the cuff more like I'm trying to do today. Just hit record and, hopefully not have to do too many edits, and then just hit publish. And it's funny too. And my wife and I will laugh about it. We're like, remember when you created a Bitcoin YouTube channel? And it's just, it's funny, but I don't regret it. Like I look back and I'm happy that I did it because I listened to my own emotions. And that's one of the main lessons that I want to come from this episode, or at least to instill in you, is that just because you say you're going to do something, listen to your heart. Like it wasn't the right time for me to create the book. My heart wouldn't have been in it. And as a result, I don't think it would have been as good of a product. Like, I don't think it would have had me in it, if that makes sense. And even though the Bitcoin thing was kind of just for fun and it didn't go anywhere, it still felt right. It still felt like the right thing to do. And I enjoyed doing it. I had a lot of fun kind of creating that content and figuring out what I wanted to say. And like I said, learning new things. And that's the last point that I wrote down here to talk about was I picked the wrong project. I picked the wrong thing to do for my Cramuary project. And it makes sense. It makes sense on paper that, the biggest project that's on my mind is writing the book, writing the kind of the Bible of Your Creative Push, writing the guidebook, the handbook, if you will, the summation of all the lessons that I've learned, something that can hopefully neatly put together all of the lessons that I've learned in the past 2.5 years, almost 300 episodes of Your Creative Push. That seems like the perfect project to try to get done. But when it came time to do it, everything inside of me was saying that it's not the right thing to do. And for the past couple months, I've been thinking that maybe it was fear that made me all these things kind of come together. Maybe it was self-sabotage because I was afraid to write this book. Or maybe I had created the Bitcoin channel as a way to not do something that I'm afraid of. But I realized that I'm not afraid of writing the book. It just wasn't the right time in the right situation. And I still wholeheartedly believe in Cramuary and the idea of getting a big project done in 1 month. But not all projects are created equal, and not all projects can be done in that way. Some of them can be, thrown in the microwave and heated up real quick, but some of them need to be slow cooked and treated with a certain amount of love. And for a goal that's so important to me for a lot of different reasons, and something that I feel is going to define so much of what I've been doing for the past couple years, it just didn't feel right to rush through that or be worrying too much about deadlines. Having the deadline be more important than the product. And I certainly didn't want to go into it burnout from the start. I wanted to go into it with all my facilities and all my joy, And I'm honestly so happy that I didn't do it, that I didn't half-ass it, that I didn't phone it in, and that I waited until now to start doing it. I've started to write it, and I'm just focusing on creating something that I love and enjoying the process of it and allowing the muse to come to me when she wants to come to me. And that was, honestly one of the biggest concerns and biggest, I guess, reasons for my shame and not wanting to really talk about it was trying to evaluate why I didn't do it. And this has been great, guys. This has been great for me to be able to talk to you and kind of work this out and figure it out. And I think the lesson or the question that I would ask you to ask yourself is to evaluate and think about if you want or if you need to do something. And for me, I'm specifically thinking about like my Bitcoin channel that I made. Ask yourself, do you really need to do this? And how much time will it take from your life and from your other creative pursuits or family time or whatever? And then what will you gain from it if it's a success? And what will you gain from it if it's a failure? And how much will it take away from your life if you do go for it? Because as you know, and as I've said many times on the show, I'm a huge proponent of going off on tangents and exploring other things that you're interested in, because you can't calculate how it will come back into your art and into your life and positively influence the things that you make and the things that you do. But definitely look at yourself in the mirror or write in your journal and literally ask yourself if the thing that you want to do is just a distraction from the big thing that you're scared to do. And for me, with specifically this example, it was borderline. And I wasn't sure, I don't think, until today exactly why, I did that thing. And I'm pissed, too, because nobody listened to my advice, by the way, and everybody bought at the top anyway. So the channel was kind of a failure anyway. It's really hard to get past that FOMO. And by the way, right now is a very good time to buy, in my opinion, not financial advice, but just saying. But even though nobody listened to me, it wasn't fruitless. I still learned those things that I talked about, and it was still something I was able to kind of cross off of my bucket list, even though me and my wife look back and laugh about the fact that I did it, especially doing it instead of writing the book. But it's not a big deal. That's what I've come to realize, is that it's not a big deal that I pushed off doing the book. And it's not a big deal if you push off your thing too. You shouldn't feel shame about realizing that it's not the right time, or you're not in the right mindset or the right place in your life to be able to do something that you care very, very deeply about. You can always do it later. You can always do it better, as long as you do it, as long as you still have that desire to do the thing that you know that you have to do. Reschedule it or figure out a different timeline for doing it. Just make sure you get to it at some point when you feel ready. And then when you feel ready, do it. That's the most important thing. But the other realization that I had, and I'm going to end the episode with this thought, is the fact that I shouldn't beat myself up about it. And it took a while for me to kind of realize that and to kind of build up the bravery to get on the microphone and do this solo episode where I just kind of come out about all these feelings that I'm having. But I had a really important realization that not only should I not beat myself up about it, after all, YCP started because of my previous weakness. Like, that's the whole reason it started, was because I was a wimp and I was scared and I was terrified, and I would distract myself and I would procrastinate and push off the big creative things that I wanted to do because I was scared of what it would look like on the other side. Those resistances started this podcast, which is one of the greatest parts of my life. And it continues because I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people, all who struggle. And that's all we talk about on the show, is getting past your resistances, getting past those things, so that we can help you, who I bet always struggles. Like, everybody struggles. And that's literally what we talk about on the show. So I don't know why I felt, for so long here that I should be invulnerable to it, or that I should be held at like a higher standard. even though I was dealing with all that stuff, even though those resistances definitely came back. They came back stronger than they were before because they were in a different form and I was in a different place in life. And, that's a reason I should be more honest with you guys, and I should be more vulnerable and talk about my continued struggles as I, continue to evolve as a creative person and as a podcast host. So I'm sorry. I am very, very sorry from the bottom of my heart that I kind of fell into that trap, that I fell into that repetition and that pattern of, creating episodes and not opening up and not being super honest and vulnerable about what's going on in my own creative life. And I promise to you that I will change, that I will open up my heart and soul to you, especially as I am starting to create and write this book now. And I will also come up with a much better plan for Cramuary next year. And I'll also try to make it more inclusive so that we can make it more of a community event. Maybe I'll make a YouTube channel for that, something that actually has some significance to you, to help you in your Cramuary goals or your creative goals in general. Whew. So I think that's it. I think I said everything I wanted to say or needed to say or didn't know that I needed to say to figure it out for myself. I appreciate you listening in. I really hope this was somewhat useful for you, but it was necessary for me, for sure, to kind of work this out and to also kind of come out to you as to why the book only now started to see some life. And I am excited. I am so excited about it. I'm so glad that I didn't do it in January, and I'm actually very happy that I have had so much experience talking to so many people about burnout and other creative blocks from this show that I kind of had the realization that I shouldn't do it, even though I said I was going to, and realizing that I didn't have gasoline in my tank. I had some sort of murky water or something in my tank, and that's no way to start something that I am truly passionate about and something that is bringing so much joy to my life right now. But that's all I've got for you today. So hopefully this was inspiring for you. But if you need a little bit more inspiration, I suggest that you go and listen to my interview on the Blue Magic podcast with Alatar, where I talk about a lot of the same things I talked about today. But also Al talks about some of the resistances and burnout that they have faced and got through in a very similar fashion, actually. Again, we'll link that up at yourcreativepush.com/287. And yeah, that's it. So go forth and conquer. Go push past your own creative resistances and be honest with yourself. It's okay to do other projects. It's okay to take breaks. And it's okay to say no to something that you said yes to earlier. Do not feel that shame. Do not let that shame control you for as long as it controlled me here the past few months. Just be honest with yourself about why you're pushing it off or why you want to do this other thing, and don't beat yourself up. I love you all so much. Go and get that amazing work done, and we will see you next week if you need the push again. Take care. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.